It's Wednesday, July 10th, and I recently completed my first extended fast. So I fasted for 5 full days, which is 120 hours. And I want to share my experience with you, and we'll start with some preparation tips. So I highly recommend that you do some prior shorter fasts, 24, 36 hours, either just water fast or dry fast, or do some prolonged 5-day fast mimicking diets. So that is a system where you're actually eating, but your body is tricked into not having the nutrient sensing pathways triggered. So you do get quite a few of the benefits of fasting, including boosting stem cells and shifting growth hormones and insulin and that sort of thing. But it's a lot easier than doing a regular fast. I also read these 2 books before I started. Dry fasting, that means not drinking any water. And I actually did a 22-hour dry fast about 5 days before I kicked off my wet fast, just to build my confidence and make me feel that doing this fast was going to be quite doable. And I initially was planning to do some dry fasting during this extended fast, so dry fasting during the day and then just drinking water at night. And I know that's a successful strategy for a lot of people. And dry fasting, by not taking in water, forces your body to burn fat in a different way. And I've heard from people like Dr. Dan Pompa that there is a sort of magic that comes with that. And I absolutely believe it. And he follows numbers that I follow with the Keto Mojo, so ketones, glucose, and hematocrit, to really know what's happening physiologically. But then I got this book. So Jason Fung is an MD. He's one of the leading fasting experts. He treats all kinds of different diseases, obesity and diabetes specifically, with fasting. And he actually recommends taking in a little bit of nutrients. So you're drinking water liberally throughout the day. You can have coffee and tea, and you can actually add up to 1 tablespoon of fat to several cups of coffee or tea per day. And bone broth is also allowed. So I decided I'm going to do 1 cup of tea with fat and 1 black coffee and 1 cup of bone broth as my fasting strategy, as well as liberal water and salt. So that's what I end up doing. Some other things I'm going to be talking about here, and I'll just show them to you. The Keto Mojo, this is the brand. It's a glucose meter. It gives you'll put 2 different strips in. You'll do 1 blood stick and you'll get glucose and hematocrit on one, and then you'll get your ketones on the other. And that's a super helpful tool. It really helped guide me through this fast. I probably wouldn't recommend fasting without a tool like this. Supplements I take throughout the fast and throughout my daily life: Restore. This is really important it's really good for your good gut bugs, and it's not good for the bad gut bugs. So since we're really having an opportunity to reset our gut microbiome, I thought it was especially important to include Restore in my protocol. So I typically take a nasal spray bedtime and upon wakening, and I also do a teaspoon of the liquid on an empty stomach 2 or 3 times a day. This is kind of a fun hack that I was doing while I was doing ketosis leading up to the fast. And I muscle tested, and it seemed like a good idea to do it during the fast on 3 of the days. It's called Keto Before 6. So this product is from Quicksilver Scientific. Chris Shade formulated it. In a nutshell, it basically turns on your AMPK signaling. It turns off your mTOR signaling. So it gets you into ketosis a little bit faster. And since I'm fasting, it may have been redundant, but like I said, I do some muscle testing and it seemed indicated, and I thought it was a compliment. I did a couple of green tea enemas during my fast. I use Peak green tea, which makes it super easy. You just dissolve 2 sachets into 2.5 cups of body temperature water. I start with some hot water, and then I add the room temperature water to get it the right temperature. So instead of having to boil your coffee and do 4 cups and yada, 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 heat it and cool it and filter it, this is so much easier, and you get a very similar result because you're getting the caffeine, you're holding it for 15 minutes. Lastly, this is a Prolon fast bar. So I mentioned a minute ago about the Prolon fasting mimicking diet. That's actually a brand. It's been studied to do what it does. There are other fasting mimicking diets out there, but I think this is the best one. And the fast bar is a breakfast. So if you want to do time restricted eating, but you want to eat in the morning for whatever reason, that's what that's formulated for. I had a box of those handy. I recommend you do it if you're going to do a fast like this. So I'm going to quickly give you my experience. So I stopped eating on 4th of July evening. I'd been at a party and I'd eaten really clean that day. I'd eaten keto that day and dairy-free and blah, 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 no junk food, and a little bit of grass-fed meat and a lot of vegetables. And the day before I'd been off my diet, so I kind of came into it with just a one day of being really clean. But a week before, like I said, I did do that 22-hour dry fast. And that wasn't too bad, actually. The only reason I cut it short at 22 instead of 24 hours was because I was supposed to go pick up my daughter and then break the fast shortly after. And she could be a handful picking her up from school, and I just didn't have great energy from about, I was supposed to break the fast, I think, at about 6:30. And from about 3 p.m. onward, I was like, okay, I would like to lay down and close my eyes, and then I'd look at my watch and like no time had passed. So I was like, oh, it's gonna be tough dealing with my toddler. So that's why I went ahead and ate a little bit before I picked her up. But 22 hours of dry fasting was fine. And I actually felt a lot of confidence from that. And I'm gonna be including a 24 to 36 hour, probably dry fast, but maybe just water fast on a very regular basis every week or two. But so basically I had kind of a cruddy diet for a couple days, and then I was keto, and then I launched into this fast. So the first day of the fast was Friday. I had a black coffee at 11:55. I actually went rock climbing, so I didn't have to work that day. So I had a nice good climb. I did a couple hours and I was climbing really well, which was great, in a fasted state, a kind of a newly fasted state. And I was running low on the ketone strip, so I went ahead and only checked my ketones at 412. And I mean, since it was the first day, that was reasonable. And my glucose was 101, my hematocrit was 34, and my ketones were low. So it was probably high because of adrenaline from the climbing. At 4:30, I was getting a little hungry, so I made a turmeric and kava drink with cacao butter, about 2 teaspoons of fat, and a little bit of MCT as well. And then at 8:08, before I drank my cup of bone broth, I made homemade bone broth on Thursday morning. My glucose was 70 and my hematocrit was 33, and I did not check my ketones, but I'm gonna be doing that a lot more going forward because I ordered another box of strips. Day 2 was Saturday. We spent the night in a casino and spent the morning outside playing by the pool in the lazy river, so I really didn't feel hungry or weak at all in the morning. At 11:45, I made myself a black coffee right before we checked out of the room. Then we hung out at the pool. And then at 12:37, at 12:30, we walked back into the casino, and all of a sudden I started feeling shaky and weak and hungry. And I checked my numbers at 12:37. My glucose was 72, hematocrit was 40, ketones were up to 2.1. So that was about 36 hours, a little over 36 hours into the fast. And one number you're looking at is your glucose divided by 18 to your ketone ratio. And that you want to see that to be a 1-to-1 ratio to really know you're in max autophagy. So at that point, I was just a little better than 2-to-1. So not max autophagy, but ketones of 2.1. At 12:50, I had a dandelion tea with some MCT, and I went ahead and took a teaspoon of keto before 6. At 3:30, I had a turmeric, I was still hungry, so I had a second beverage. I had a turmeric tea with cacao butter as well. At 4:30, I drank a curry sipping broth. Oh, I should have showed that to you. I got that on Amazon. There's something called Millie's sipping broth, and it's basically vegetable broth in a tea bag. That's a great thing to have to ward off the hunger and make sure you're getting enough salt. It contains sea salt and organic herbs and spices. So at 7:52, I had a glucose of 61, hematocrit of 40%. So the initial one was 34. So I've been a little hemoconcentrated on day 2. Hematocrit's basically giving you your hydration status. And then my ketones were pretty stable at 2.2. So now my ratio is 1.5-to-1. So I'm getting there. Day 3. This day was a little harder. I was a lot hungrier. I was weak. At 8:35, I woke up, I took the keto before 6, and I took 3 drops of Biocidin. And I figured, well, I'm restoring my gut microbiome. I might as well add the Biocidin in. 8:36, checked my numbers, 54, 41%, and 4.8. So my ratio now, and I hadn't had anything to eat since the bone broth at 8 p.m. the night prior. I was 1 to 1.6, so max autophagy, burning a lot of fat here. 9:15, I had a hydrogen water. 9:40, I had a black coffee. 3:35, my sugar was 50 and my crit was 39, and I was still conserving ketone strips, so I didn't check a ketone. It would have been interesting to see. But I didn't feel good. I really felt shaky that whole morning. If I was sitting in front of the computer doing work, I was okay. But if I had squatted down to play with my daughter and then stood up, I would literally almost passed out. So glucose of 50 is too low. I tend to run low, but that's too low. So I ate a fast bar at that point. So that was day 3. Then I felt pretty good. So 4 o'clock, I did a pretty intense 15-minute workout. Then at 6 o'clock, I did a 50-minute walk, nice outdoor walk. 8:07, my numbers were a lot different. So it was 83, 46, and 2.3. So I know the fast bar contributed, and I also know the exercise contributed to boosting that glucose up. So it's it's hard to tell exactly what happened, but obviously the ketones came down significantly. So now my ratio was 2 to 1. 8:11, I had a cup of bone broth. And I was actually quite hungry when it was time to go to bed. I was, kind of tired to go to bed early. So at 9:47, I made myself a kava with a little bit of just cacao shavings, that's pure cacao butter, and a little bit of MCT oil. And I drank about 2/3 of that until I felt satiated. And then I slept. And I slept pretty well that day, that night. Day 4, Monday. Let's see. Started with my Restore, 8:05 keto before 6. I took 5 drops of Biocidin. I'd had a couple of doses of Biocidin on day 3. And at 8:25, I took a cold shower. So I had actually woken up hot the night of day 3. And so I went to bed early, but I did wake up a couple times, and I was up for maybe 30 minutes at a time. And I remember thinking, gosh, I'm so hot. So in the morning, I actually was up for doing a cold shower. Normally in the morning, that's the last thing I want to do, but it's summertime now, so I know it's really good to increase fat burning. So I went ahead and took a cold shower. 8:30 numbers were 68, 38%, and 3.4. That gives me a ratio that was almost 1 to 1. It was a little less than 1 to, or a little more glucose than ketones for the 1 to 1 ratio, but it was getting there. So it actually took me a while to recover from that fasting bar, I thought. I thought that's what it was. 9:15, matcha, 2 teaspoons MCT. Loved my green tea matcha. I use Synergy out of a jar that I get from Vitacost.com. And this cool little frother thing, it's like an espresso milk frother. I just frothed it up with the MCT oil in the cup. 12:08, numbers were 68, 38%, and 4.0. So the ketones crept up. I was now in max autophagy again. I was really hungry though. So I drank a hydrogen water to take off the edge, and that worked pretty well. I also did another 15-minute workout, and I did a sauna. So I went into my sauna, and I got a good sweat on. I was in there for about 25 minutes, my Relax far infrared sauna. 4:34, numbers were 88, 40%, and 3.7. So my sugar had come up significantly, even though I didn't eat anything. I had just worked out and done the sauna. And the ketones actually came down just a tad from 4 to 3.7. So I was hungry still, so I had a snack. I made myself a little fat bomb. I took a teaspoon of coconut cacao butter, or what is it? It's cacao paste shavings, and a teaspoon of coconut oil, and then I ate that. And then I had a teaspoon of pecan butter because I was still quite hungry. And that really took the edge off. Then I went ahead and had a sipping broth, and I was feeling twitchy. So when I start feeling twitches all over my body, I know my body's mobilizing toxins, and I know heavy metals are stored up in my tissues. So I did a green tea enema, and there was a lot of dry chunks of poop in there. Sorry guys to gross you out, but I was amazed. This was day 4. I hadn't had anything to eat since Thursday night, and it was Monday, other than 1 fast bar. So I was glad that I'd cleaned out my colon in that case. And I actually felt a boost of energy after I did that. 7:30, Restore Biocidin. 7:51, headache. 7:53, hydrogen water. 8:21, 70, 41, and 4.0. So glucose had come down significantly. Ketones had come up a little bit. I was now also, again, in max autophagy. So I felt like, hey, that was a pretty good strategy. I think that fat bomb was pretty good. That night, I laid down in bed and I just felt awful. I felt really toxic. I got up a couple times to take some detox things. So I took some Cyto Detox. I took some DIM, liposomal DIM. And then I got up again and I took some citrus pectin, a drink from Wendy Myers called CitraCleanse. And I just still felt really bad. And I got up and just read for a while. And then I took something called Catalyst Cleanse from Solar Ray Foundation. I took a large dose of that. That's an interesting product for detox and killing bugs. But I felt like I finally felt better. And then I was able to sleep. But that was after 1 o'clock. And of course, the reading I'd done was super inspiring. So I woke up at 6:25, like, yay, let's get up and take a walk. But I was groggy, but I was awake and I was ready to go. So at that point, I took a cold shower. I took my Restore. This day, instead of the keto before 6, I opted for liver sauce, which is something that helps move toxins from the blood through the hepatocyte, the liver cell, and into the bile. And the idea is you take the liver sauce, and then 30 minutes later, you take a binder because you want to get the stuff out of your blood, into your liver cell, into your bile, and then you want to bind it up in the gut so you don't reabsorb it in the gut. So my plan, I knew because I'd felt so toxic that night before that I was going to have to do another one of these green tea enemas. So my plan was liver sauce 30 minutes later, binder 30 minutes later, coffee or green tea enema. At that point, I also took Biocidin, and then another product from Solar Ray called Candy RX, a candida cleanse thing, and 4 pumps of the liposomal glutathione. 7:20, I went for a 31-minute walk. It was lovely. I was outdoors. 7:50, I went ahead and did my Myers CitraCleanse. 8:35, hydrogen water. 8:50, numbers were 65, 42, 4.1. I was feeling pretty good this day. I thought maybe I'd just go with water, and I had to go to work. So I was working a half day, so I figured, well, I'll just I'm skipping caffeine. I'm skipping the fat in the morning. Maybe I just overdid it, probably. And it caught up to me. So 3:07, I got home, checked my numbers. Oh, I'm sorry, before I went to work, I also did the green tea enema again. It was productive for parasites. So some of you may relate if you're on major detox protocols, but that would explain why I was feeling so twitchy and awful, because when you kill parasites, they actually kind of disintegrate a little bit and they release a bunch of toxins into your body, including heavy metals, because they are a heavy metal sponge. So I was really glad I did that. I felt better, definitely more energetic after I did that. I did a 15-minute yoga session, and at work, I drank some Quinton, which is a electrolyte, little tiny ampules of electrolyte stuff you take on an empty stomach. And why I mentioned that is because my hematocrit came down to the best number it's been since I started the fast. So am I retaining water because I was toxic because of the parasite die-off, or did the Quinton really make a difference? I'm not sure. But at 3:07, my numbers were 62, so that was stable. 37, so that was 5% less, my hematocrit. And then my ketones bumped up from 4.1 to 4.8. So I was 1 to 1.4, so super max autophagy. I was hungry though, so I made my fat bomb. This time I decided to do pistachio butter. I ended up taking 2 teaspoons of pistachio butter because I was just still so hungry and so hungry. And then I did the curry, sipping broth. 450, hungry and lightheaded, checked my numbers again. My glucose was down to 59, hematocrit was 35, ketones were 5. So because I was feeling so cruddy, I went ahead and had a fast bar again, and I sat outside enjoying my fast bar, every bite of it, like chewing it 30 times, and it was honestly probably the most delicious thing I've ever eaten in my life. They are actually pretty good, but this one was exceptionally delicious. Then I had half a cup of white tea, and I thought that'll get me through the rest of the day. I had a 2.5-hour meeting from 6:30 to 9, and so, interestingly, right after my fast bar, I had a really intense urge to break the fast. Like, it was very hard not to just start eating at that point. And I was like, one thing, maybe a prune. But I felt really proud of myself that I let that wave pass. And for the rest of the day, it was actually pretty tough. So I think my lesson from that was I should have done maybe the matcha with the fat in the morning, and even though I didn't feel like I needed it. And I was actually pretty toxic from all this die-off that was happening. So lesson learned. But what was really cool was I got to check my numbers again at 9:12, and I hadn't exercised or done a sauna. So what did the fast bar do to my numbers? So again, at 4:50 it was 59, 35%, and 5.0. At 9:12 it was 64, 34%, and 3.7. So glucose went up by 5, ketones came back down by 1.3. And so that wasn't a huge effect. I was still in max autophagy. So it was pretty cool to have those numbers and know that the fast bar is a legitimately good thing to have if you're feeling like you really need to have something for your health's sake. I did have the bone broth in the evening. I intended to make it till the next morning. This fasting expert told me, oh, well, you might as well break it in the morning, do an extra half a day because the nights are the easiest. You sleep well, you have these great dreams. Well, I hadn't been sleeping that well on the fast, I'll be honest. And the night before was a terrible night of sleep. So I laid down, I was tired, and I was laying there and I just felt awful again. Just every breath felt uncomfortable. I was twitching. I felt my heart beating, and I was kind of wired and tired. So I decided to go ahead and break my fast. But then I'd made it 5 days, so I'm really proud of myself. My thought was I could make it through the night, maybe burn another pound of fat, which, by the way, I probably am 5 pounds down and my pants are fitting better. And I decided I just didn't want to make myself miserable because this isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. I'm planning on doing a number of more of these extended fasts, probably on a monthly or at least quarterly basis going forward for a while to get all the health benefits. Because it does get easier, your body gets better at doing it. I've lived almost 40 years of my life without doing something like that. So I was really proud of myself, and all the things that I've told you throughout this video are kind of what I learned, and I'm looking forward to doing it again soon. So hope this is helpful.